In categorical logic, we have universals. That's a universal. E and A are universals, and I and O are particulars. So a universal in an E would be a universal negative, and A would be a universal affirmative. I is as a particular affirmative, and O is a particular negative. And this is how you categorize things. And the fact is, if you're on Netflix, this is how it uses basic categorical logic, and all of the movies are categorized. So, and that's what we do. This is human reasoning. So, let me give you a quick example. If I say all swans are black, and then I find a white swan, then it's not true that all swans are black, because we found a particular affirmative. Some swans are white. So that brought us into a contradiction. And that's your affirmative, and your affirmative universal, affirmative particular. So let me get into the scriptures, and I'll show you more about this. Romans chapter 9. Let's see. It is not as though the word of God had failed, for not all who are descended from Israel belong to Israel. And let's look at this. I'll read it really quick through, and then we'll get to the details. And not all are children of Abraham, because they are of his offspring. But through Isaac shall your offspring be named. This means that it is not the children of the flesh who are the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring. For this is what the promise said: about this time next year I will return, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only so, but when Rebekah had conceived children by one man, our father Isaac, though they were not yet born or done nothing either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because not because of works, but because of him who calls. She was told, the older will serve the younger, as is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. So we're going to look at categories. Let me show you how I set it up. So when I say some, that's the quantity. That's how many. That's just some. It's not all. It's not every single one in the universe. It's just some. And here's your subject. So this S is a subject. Some people, the people, that's your subject. And then you have your predicate, R. Not predicate, I'm sorry. This is called the copula, or it's the to be form. And everything after this is the predicate. People who belong to Israel or Abraham. So we're just looking at this phrase, and it's an I for particular affirmative. So we're just looking at this one. And I probably need to use a different color so it just doesn't look so dirty. S, and you have your P. It's all scrunched together. It's like a notebook. So we have, we're looking at people. That's a category. And then on the other side of R is people who belong to Israel or Abraham. And so when we go to the scriptures here, we say, he says, for not all who are descended from Israel belong to Israel. So we have Israel as a category. And all is your affirmative, but he put a not here, which is negation, which is, it's not all. So then we infer that he's, at least some are, but not every single one. But it's not that, if I said no person, if I said all descendants of Israel are from Israel, that's not true. If I say no descendants of Israel are Israel, that's also not true. So we're saying that some, we're in the particular part. Not all are descended from Israel, belong to Israel. So descended from Israel. The descendants from Israel belong to Israel. Okay? So some people, or we could say some descendants are people who belong to Israel. We're just kind of looking at, I put people as this generic form, but if I said descendants, some descendants are people who belong to Israel. So there's actually people from Israel who actually do belong to Israel. We're not talking about the nation. So that's your particular affirmative. The next one is to go to O. When you go to O, this is your particular negative. So I can say at the same time, I could say some descendants or some people are people who are not who are not people who belong to Israel. And I just put this are not. Here's your quotes. So I didn't want to rewrite it. I should have rewrote it. So I can say, we'll look at this way. Let's try it this way. Some people are not people who belong to Israel. Some people are not. Or some descendants are not. So that means that we're not talking about nations anymore. It's not about being what John Baptist, don't say we are children of Abraham. God can look at these rocks and make children for himself or something. So that some are not. So then when you go to, let's go to a Venn diagram. And a Venn diagram is like this. S is your subject, P is your predicate. So these, let me get better deal here. We got the, shootness. You got your circle here, that's a category, and this is also a category. Now, how do these categories relate to each other? Let's say people or descendants. Well, I say people because we're looking at election from eyes of a Gentile. We're not really looking at the Jews thing. It's kind of like the Jews don't really apply to us because I'm not a Jew. I'm an American. But so I said some people are people who belong to Israel. So these are the people who we would say this is people who belong to Israel as a category. What did he say? From Israel belong to Israel. We could say just Israel. So let's say this category is Israel. And then if I say some people, this is a particular negative, some people, some, that means that I'm going to put this X right here. And that's what this, some of this category belongs over here. Okay, and then if I said some people are not, so we have your sum over here. Some people are not Israel. Let me go over here. So and that's the way, I'm not sure. Where you're looking at is this. There's nothing there. So that means there's a void. So some people are not people who belong to this category. Okay. I'm not sure if that helps, but it's like if I said that some Chinese, I always say some Chinese because we're having a problem in our lives with China. So I could say China's there, some of that category. We could say America's there, some of that category. We could say Israel's there, some right there. So all these nations, so some belong here. And then, but also we can say that if this was Israel, there's all these people over here. Some don't belong. So you're seeing that some of them don't belong here. There's no I there. I's not there. You're like, where is I? Well, because some of them don't belong. But we're not in the universal categories because we can't say all people from Israel belong to the spiritual Israel. If that were the case, it would look like this. If it was the case that it was by nations, all Israel belonged to Israel, it would look like this. Let's see. If I said, oops, what happened to my pen? Let's see. Oh, that's why. So I'm in. If I said all, which is still subject predicate by quantity is A, affirmative. That's your A. All people. It would look like this. That this would, you scratch this out, and then this would be in this category. So it'd be all Israel. All Israel people. Israel people belong to our Israel. We're talking about spiritual Israel. It would look like that. So we'd say that there's like none or not. All of them are in this category. So this whole category is in this category. And if I said no people from Israel, or let's say no people from America, to do this, and I said it would be our A, and then it's E. So then we would say no Americanos are Israel people of Israel, are people who belong to Israel, are people who belong to Israel. And this is so sloppy. I don't know. Okay, so no Americans. So if this is a category of Americans, I want to show that, and this is the category of people who belong to Israel, it would look like this. So it's just like this is not even there. It's this. So this is its own category. It's like we're saying it doesn't even belong to this category. So, but that's not what we're not dealing with universals. We're dealing with particulars. So, and that's the issue. What we're looking at is not universals, but particulars. That there's like these, but he's talking to Israel. So that's his argument with this particular people. And so, but then he goes on to the universal part of it. It says, not all are children of, so we're not thinking of universal, we're thinking of particulars, so not all are children of Abraham because they are offspring. So that just because you're his offspring, that's not the rule. If I say, if P, I'm an offspring of Abraham, then I'm of Israel, he's saying, that's not even the case. That's not the rule. But through Isaac shall your offspring be named. So it's not Ishmael, because you got Ishmael and Isaac, but he's talking about it's through Isaac. He's the promised child. This means that it's not the children of the flesh. And now we got our here's our subject, the flesh, and not is going to say it's your negation. So we can say that no child of the flesh are children of God. So the question then becomes, what does he mean by flesh? So we know Ishmael, there was no promise. It was just that Abraham and Sarah decided to do something, and it came out. That wasn't the case. So so the flesh, it's not, so it excludes nationality, excludes also it's going to say the flesh, like Jesus says, the flesh counts for nothing. It's the spirit who gives life. We're going to see that it connects to the will, the flesh, who are the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring. So then it says all children of the promise are children of God. So, and this is your A, which is your universal affirmative. This is E, your universal negative. So that every child of the promise. So who are the children of the promise? And he describes it. For this is what the promise said, about this time next year I'll return and Sarah shall have a son. And not only so, but also Rebecca. So now he's going to the next part. So this, you get one case with Abraham of the promise, and you get another case with a Rebecca. Conceived children by one man, our father Isaac. Then we're going to Isaac, though they were not yet born, or done nothing good or bad, in order that God's a purpose of election. So that's the doctrine that we're talking about with you, unconditional election. Might continue. So it's unconditional because this election does not, there's no conditions to qualify for an elect, to be an elect. The only condition is God's purpose. Might continue, not because of works. So the works in the flesh are kind of probably we're looking at the same thing, that Abraham did this through works to try to fulfill something. But it was God who came to him and told him, and then it was Isaac. So the purpose of election might continue not because of works, but because of him who calls. She was told the older will serve the younger, as written, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. So we have this, Esau is of the flesh, Ishmael is of the flesh, but we got Jacob and Isaac are of the promise. So it's not, and Esau, both Esau and Ishmael came from Abraham. So that's what we come up to here. Some people are people who belong to Israel. And those some people were Jacob and Isaac. And then there's some people, then we go to our O, which is some people are not people who belong to Israel, and that's Esau and Ishmael. So those are the some that do not. So what we learned is two universals, and we got two particulars are the cases. And these are probably like your rules. And these are the cases. As far as propositional logic goes, what we say is this, it starts like this: if P, then Q. So this is necessary for this to exist. This is sufficient. When this exists, then everything in P was met. So all the necessary conditions were met for Q to exist. So there, so if P is the case, then everything's fulfilled, all the conditions are met, and then so therefore Q. So we go to this: if God calls, that's P, then they were elected, loved, and of the promise. God called. So therefore, and the qualifications for call. So anything that, so if, for you to be qualified as the elect, God has to first call you. That's the condition. So it's not based on our works. To qualify for the elect or the loved, that God loved you and promised you were of the promise, is that God, you're a child of Abraham, child of faith. You believe the gospel. When you believe the gospel, God called you. But that, so the condition for why you're the elect is because God calls you. The reason why you're saved and justified and soon will be glorified is because God called you. This negates works and reason, flesh, nationality. So the only purpose why we believe is God. His purpose, His will, His love for particular individuals. That's that. I mean, that's pretty controversial, but that's what conditional election is. Unconditional election is. So hope that helped. That's it for today. Thanks. Bye.